All right, today we're going to be in Exodus chapter 36. Now, I was contemplating putting Exodus 36, 37, 38, and 39 in one episode, but we're going to take things slow, get through each and every chapter on its own and get through there. But first, our memory verse for the week comes from Proverbs chapter 24, verse 28. It says, do not deceive with, it actually says, do not testify against your neighbor. Do without cause. Do not deceive with your lips. So this one is I don't know why this one is hard for me to memorize, but I'm going to keep working at it. Make sure you keep working at the memory verses for the year. Don't forget, you can go to christianboypodcast.com and search and then click the link to the memory verses, and you can see all the memory verses that we're going to do this year. So stick with me doing those. Do not testify against your neighbor without cause. Do not deceive with your lips. Proverbs 24, verse 28. Exodus 36 has 38 verses in all, and it's really talking about different things that they're going to be doing building the tabernacle. And we're going to go through this with 36, 37, 38, and 39. I believe 40 is when they actually set up the tabernacle and we see some things happen. So we got a few more chapters in Exodus. It's been a wild journey. I didn't expect it to take us this long to get through Exodus. We really should be in another chapter right now, another book. But, life happened and I'm not the one to try to control everything. But anyway, let's get right into it on the Christian Boy podcast. Before we do, don't forget to like and share this podcast with someone. All right, let's get right into it. Chapter 36. Bezalel, Aholiab, and all the skilled people are to work based on everything the Lord has commanded. The Lord has given them wisdom and understanding to know how to do all the works of constructing the sanctuary. So Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab and every skilled person in whose heart the Lord had placed his wisdom, everyone whose heart moved him to come to do the work, to come to the work and do it. They took from Moses' presence all the contributions that the Israelites had brought for the task of making the sanctuary. Meanwhile, the people continued to bring freewill offerings morning after morning. Then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work for the sanctuary came one by one from the work they were doing and said to Moses, the people are bringing more than is needed for the construction of the work of the Lord commanded to be done. After Moses gave an order, they sent a proclamation throughout the camp. Let no man or woman make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. So the people stopped. The materials were sufficient for them to do all the work. There was more than enough. All skilled craftsmen among those doing the work made the tabernacle with 10 curtains. Bezalel made them of finely spun linen, as well as blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, with a design of cherubim worked into them. The length of each of the curtains was 42 feet, and the width of each curtain 6 feet. All the curtains had the same measurements. He joined 5 of the curtains to each other, and the other 5 curtains he joined to each other. He made loops of blue yarn on the edge of the last curtain in the first set, and did the same on the edge of the outermost curtain in the second set. He made 50 loops on one curtain, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain in the second set, so that the loops lined up with each other. He also made 50 gold clasps and joined the curtains to each other, so that the tabernacle became a single unit. He made curtains of goat hair for a tent over the tabernacle. He made 11 of them. The length of each curtain was 45 feet, and the width of each curtain 6 feet. All 11 curtains had the same measurement. He joined 5 of the curtains together and the other 6 together. Then he made 50 loops on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set, and 50 loops on the edge of the corresponding curtain in the second set. He made 50 bronze clasps to join the tent together as a single unit. He also made a covering for the tent of ram skin dyed red and a covering of manatee skin on top of it. He made upright planks of acacia wood for the tabernacle. The length of each plank was 15 feet, and the width of each was 27 inches. There were two pinions connected to each other for each plank. He did the same for all the planks of the tabernacle. He made planks for the tabernacle as follows: 20 for the south side, and he made 40 silver bases to put under the planks, 2 bases under the first plank for its 2 pinions, and 2 bases under each of the following planks for their pinions. For the second side of the tabernacle, the north side, he made 20 planks with their 40 silver bases, 2 bases under the first plank, and 2 bases under each of the following ones. And for the west side of the tabernacle, he made 6 planks. He also made 2 additional planks for the back corners of the tabernacle. They were paired at the bottom and joined together at the top in a single ring. This is what he did with both of them for the 2 corners, so that there were 8 planks with their 16 silver bases, 2 bases under each one. He made 5 crossbars of acacia wood for the planks on one side of the tabernacle, 5 crossbars for the planks on the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 crossbars for those at the back of the tabernacle on the west. He made the central crossbar run through the middle of the planks from one end to the other. He overlaid them with gold and made their rings as of gold as holders for the crossbars. He also overlaid the crossbars with gold. Then he made the veil with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen. He made with a design of cherubim worked into it. He made 4 posts of acacia wood for it and overlaid them with gold. Their hooks were of gold, and he cast 4 silver bases for the post. He made a screen embroidered with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen for the entrance to the tent. Together with its 5 posts and their hooks, he overlaid the tops of the posts and their bands with gold, but their 5 bases were bronze. Okay, so most of this chapter, as you already know, is mostly instructions on how they built what God told them to build. Now, you're going to hear me say this for these next few chapters mostly, is the first thing I'm going to say is, what God says happens. We see this happening in these verses here. God explained how he wanted the tabernacle to be built, who he put his spirit into, and now we're seeing that take place in these chapters. And that's what's interesting. Sometimes we don't think that God is doing what we need him to do when he needs to do it, or when God says something to us, we don't think that that's going to happen. But as you can see, we've seen it already in Genesis with Abraham and his family, and we're seeing the continuation of the promises to Abraham through the Israelites right now. But we also see God making promises and saying his word to others and fulfilling that word. So that's what's interesting. But one of the things that really got me, and the thing I really want to focus on in this chapter, especially because most of it is basically instructions, is the beginning of the chapter. The craftsmen were doing the work, and eventually they came to Moses in verse 4 and 5, verse 4, 5, 6, and 7. And they came to him and said, we have enough building. Brief synopsis. They say, we have enough building materials for the temple and for the tabernacle. We don't need anything else. The people are bringing more than what we need to be done, what we needed to be done. And Moses told them, nobody else bring anything else. And verse 7 is what I want to go to. It says the materials were sufficient for them to do all the work. There was more than enough. And this is what I really want to stay at. I want to, like we were talking about talents last week and a holy ab and having your talents and the things that you're supposed to do. But I want to talk about something a little bit specific to that. When you are told by God that you're supposed to do something, or when you know that you are compelled by our Creator to do a certain thing, everything that you need to get that thing done will be provided when you need it. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's going to be questions of if I'm going to have enough money to eat today, or if I'm going to have enough gas in my car to get where I need to get, or if I'm going to be able to provide for my family in certain ways or do certain things. But if God has put you on this mission, every single need that you have will be provided for. George Mueller is one of my greatest examples of God's provision in life. He's basically my proof of provision for any Christian who may need it. Every time him and his family needed something, he adopted many orphans. He basically ran an orphanage with how many children he had. Every time they needed food or something, it would be provided when they needed it, because George Mueller knew what his mission in life was. And when we walk in that mission and when we do what God has called us to do, every single thing that we may think we need and everything that we know that we need will be provided for us. So that's just a little nitpick that I have out of this chapter. God had a mission for the tabernacle to be built. God always has his mission. Right now, his mission is for us to spread the good news of his kingdom that is returning. And so when we do what we're supposed to do, and when we follow what we're supposed to follow and obey God and listen to what he has to say and do what he tells us to do, everything that we need to get our mission done or get the thing that we need to get done will be provided for us. So the question becomes, if I'm not being provided for, and if the things that I need are not coming my way, am I doing what God told me to do? If the answer is yes, then everything that you need will be provided for. If the answer is no, that might explain the lack of need that you have. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes the deceiver comes to tell us that what we're doing is not for God, or what we're doing is not going to grow, and discourage us. And we should know the difference between a voice of discouragement and the voice of the Lord telling us what to do. So when you're doing what God told you to do, whether it build the tabernacle as they were doing in the Old Testament, or whether it's talk to somebody across the room from you about the good news of the Lord, when you do what God tells you to do, you will be rewarded for what you do, and you will have what you need to get what God says to get done. Another great example is in, I believe, first or second Kings. I think it's First Kings, when Elijah was with the widow and her son. She told him, we only have enough bread and I only have enough oil and flour to make one more loaf of bread for me and my son to eat, and then we're just going to die, is what she said. But Elijah said, before you make some for you and your son, make some for me first. This woman had an option. Is she going to listen to the prophet of God and make him food because he was telling her that the Lord told her to make him food? Or is she going to do what she wanted to do and make the food for her and her son so that they can die? But she listened to the prophet. She made the food for him first. She made him some food. And then every time her oil never ran out and her flour never ran out. And she was able to make bread for him, her son, and herself all throughout the famine, because there was no rain during that time. Elijah prayed for the rain. God told them the rain was going to go away and there was going to be a famine because King Ahab was doing wrong. And it was it's a great story. You should go read this book of First and Second Kings. Very nice. But it was a famine because King Ahab was disobeying God, and him and his wife Jezebel had a lot of 400 prophets of Baal, and they were chasing out prophets of God, and God sent the cloud. He took away the rain. And so there was a famine in the land, and that's when it happened. And God provided for that lady because she had enough responsibility and obedience to listen to what he had said to her. Imagine if Moses came down from the mountain. Okay, we got the tablets. We don't need to build God this tabernacle. The people were willing to give until it was more than enough. That's all that needs to be said. So what are you doing, and when are you going to have more than enough? The answer is when you're doing what God told you to do. So think about what you're doing with your everyday life. Do I have more than enough? Sometimes we think, do I have enough money in my finances to be able to live day to day? Are you doing what God said do? Be wise with your finances. Are you budgeting? Are you doing what you're supposed to do with your money? If you're not doing what you're supposed to do with your money, if you're not budgeting your money and making sure that your money goes to the right places at the right time, of course you're not going to have any of your money in your account. Also, are you doing the right thing in your life? You're wondering why you have so much strife with so many different people. Are we living with kindness and patience with others, or are we doing the wrong thing with others around us? So those are things to think about when you go through life and do all these different things. So yeah, when you have more than enough, you always will have more than enough, or at least what you need when you do what God told you to do. So do what God tells you to do on today. That's basically what I got from this. And we see it all throughout this chapter. And we're going to see it through the other chapters that the people are obedient in the instruction that God gave to Moses to build the tabernacle. So yeah, God bless you. I pray that you're blessed by this episode, and I'm going to see you on the next one.